Under Florida's Constitution and its statutes, the state and its agents are not permitted to claim copyright on its public records unless the legislature specifically permits it. This includes a work made or received pursuant to law or ordinance or in connection with the transaction of official business by any state, regional, county, district, municipal, or other unit of government and their associated committees and divisions created or established by the laws of the government of Florida. Text, communications, and images produced by the government of Florida and any county, region, district, authority, agency, or municipal officer, department, division, board, committee, bureau, commission, or other separate unit of government created or established by law are consequently in the public domain according to court interpretation in Microdecisions Incorporated versus Skinner.
Maxwell, web management is here today to do that, and you have been provided some materials in advance. Go ahead.
As the city manager said, in January we engaged Web Management Services to do our market study, and financial feasibility operations management portion will be the next stage. But today, Duncan Webb of Web Management Services is here to talk to you a little bit about the market. And with that, I'll turn it over to Duncan.
Get that. All right, good afternoon, Mayor, members of Council. Thank you for inviting me back to present some work. We were here just 2 weeks ago, so it's been a real scramble to assemble.
Excuse me one second. Let me ask that you formally introduce yourself.
Right, yes. My name is Duncan Webb. I'm the president of Web Management Services, management consulting practice for the arts based in New York City. Good. We've assembled a lot of information to share with you today. I apologize that it is a lot and it may be a little bit overwhelming. Please don't hesitate to interrupt along the way through if you have questions or comments to make. You have a written version of this. I'm afraid in the rush, you got the second newest version. There are a couple of tiny changes that are in the version I'm presenting here, but it's basically this same version that we'll march through together. So off we go. So my brief is that there are divergent opinions on this plan for an amphitheater relative to the original Banshell plan. So our job is to make recommendations on the optimal concept, including issues related to purpose, functional capabilities, flexibilities, seating options, amenities, and covering options. So really, to me, what it's boiling down to is what's the right balance between the amphitheater and the park. Now, this is the halfway point of our work. This is just what's the right concept. The second half of the work is preliminary business planning. How do you program it? How do you operate it? And how do you financially sustain it? And then that is the work we'll be doing over the next 4 weeks. So the market assessment, so that's the work we're doing today. And whenever we do these studies, we are always asking and answering 4 questions, and this is in my proposal. Number one, who's the audience? So who lives here, who visits here, what do they like, what do they want? Is there capacity and propensity in the market to support the venue? 2, what is the level and nature of demand on the part of users? So local groups, promoters, educators, and others who want access to the space. 3, what is your regional competitive opportunity relative to the other facilities? And 4, what is the best project to advance community goals? We always try and change it from simply a supply-demand question to a community investment decision. How do we wisely spend our resources in order to move our community in the direction we're going? Context is very important. There's been a lot of work and study of this sort of plan for years. Key milestones, the Imagine Clearwater plan, included this idea of the green, 4-acre lawn with the state-of-the-art bandshell, and this was the result of a community-driven planning process. 2018 Downtown Redevelopment Plan noted the importance of the green to support a variety of activities to support downtown redevelopment. Discussions both before that and after that with Ruth Eckerd Hall and others sort of brought this idea forward that maybe the amphitheater should be bigger, better, more fixed seating, the idea of a cover, and that it would do more to drive downtown, and it would generate net revenue for the benefit of the community. So goals for the project. So looking back at Imagine Clearwater, we sort of took out the following goals: make the waterfront the heart of Clearwater, celebrate the city's authentic history and identity, provide public access to safe and beautiful natural amenities, connect to the rest of Clearwater, and be a catalyst for a more vibrant downtown to drive economic and fiscal well-being. We heard those in our interviews a couple of weeks ago. In the interviews, we also heard a lot around drive the revitalization of downtown and generate sufficient revenues to subsidize operations of the entire site, kind of a hope for the project. It's also important contextually to understand the charter restrictions. So again, we have to work with these. Prohibit the restrictions, prohibit the sale, donation, lease, or conveyance of the property, designated recreation space on the city's comp plan. The property can be leased for an existing use. The charter restrictions prohibits the development or maintenance of the property for other than open space and public utilities together. It does provide for city-owned bandshell and associated facilities, including removable seating. The charter restrictions prohibit the sale, donation, or lease or other transfer or use of the property for other than city facilities without a referendum. And finally, the green must be used for public parks and places of recreation only. All right, so that sets the stage. The next thing I'd like to do is talk about some of the broader forces and trends in this world of developing outdoor facilities. There are 4 trends that I'm going to identify for you. One is that venues now support, or audiences want a broader experience. So it isn't simply about coming in, sitting down in your seat facing the front, enjoying the show and going home. There's a lot more around what happens before, after, and during that makes the experience better. So opening it up earlier, food and beverage operations, the ability to move around, all of these things become increasingly important, particularly for younger audiences. The second trend is temporary pop-up and retractable elements, this idea of trying to have things that can be adjusted in the venue. The third trend, it's not really new, but sort of re-emerging, this idea of integrating venues into the landscape, sort of a element of landscape architecture. And finally, this is something happening all over the entertainment business, is this idea of having sort of premium services to sell, sort of a VIP option. It's a way to make more money by offering additional special things to some audiences. So let me just highlight some of these. I'll go through these quickly. So here's an amphitheater in Montana, in Bonner, Montana. It's the Kettle House Amphitheater. Kettle House is a brewery. So there is a brewery on site as a part of the amphitheater, as well as a state-of-the-art kitchen, cooking, gourmet food options, cocktail service throughout the evening, and very sort of open well before and long after the event. This is a winery amphitheater in California. So a number of wineries are doing this. And again, their objective is to sell wine and to build awareness and support for their brand. So a lot of the experience around a performance is the wine tasting and drinking and partying before and after the performances. This is an example of a venue in Pittsburgh called Stage AE. So outdoor, 5,500 uncovered seats, plus another 2,400 indoor. In addition to the outdoor space, they have 3 independent concert spaces, an indoor music hall, an indoor club, and an outdoor amphitheater. It's partly owned by the Steelers, and you can see in one of those images, it's behind the football stadium. So along with live music, it's used for professional wrestling and a range of sort of experiences beyond the performances. Here's one in Quebec, in Trois-Rivières. What's interesting about this venue is that in that cold Quebec winter, the stage house closes up, and inside is a club, a music club that has a capacity of, where is it? It's about 500 for indoor performances with full food and beverage capabilities. Now let me talk about the concept of portability, retractability, and temporary. So this is just an image about the use of container storage boxes. These are being transformed in lots of different ways. In the top left is a closed one, a shipping container. In the image below it, it opens up into a coffee bar, essentially. In the top right is an image of a venue, another one in Quebec, where it's 2 shipping containers on top of each other. The one underneath is the bar. The one on top of it is sort of a VIP lounge for people coming to performances. Well, there's the image of that in the bottom right. And then bottom left is an image of a portable, an inflatable screen at an amphitheater in Utah. So increasingly used. They've got a sort of full summer film series there. This is a venue in San Diego. It's the home of the symphony in the summer there. And they build this from scratch every year, sort of the same way you build your stage around the existing band shell. It's all mobile, it's all temporary, but now, interestingly, the symphony is working to develop a new permanent facility on the site. So they're getting a little tired of the assembly and disassembly. Seating is 3,000, all uncovered. I should say, when I'm talking about seating this afternoon, I'm going to talk about seats under cover, seats not covered, and lawn, because those three sort of categories are very important to this discussion. So here's a couple of more sort of interesting. This is a venue in, where is this one? Right. This is in Austria. It is an old fortress dating to back to the 1200s. It was modernized in 2006, and you can see the retractable roof there, where it's all bunched up in the middle. It's a membrane that opens up onto that entire area, which can hold there's 4,000 people under cover when it's in that open size. Here is in Miami is a project currently underway. This is the Klipsch Amphitheater. The city has, it's an existing amphitheater, but what they're doing now is installing this ring and a retractable cover over the amphitheater. So it's interesting because they've made a deal with Florida Power and Light. It's installing solar panels on the top of it that generate power that they get the revenues from, but the seating is in the first close part is covered. So you have essentially 2,600 seats, 2,700 seats that will be covered by that retractable roof, and then another 7,200 people on the lawn not covered. Here's I couldn't resist showing this one from a Roman amphitheater in Verona, where they are now in the process of approving the funding for a membrane roof that goes over the entire amphitheater. The capacity inside there is 15,000. The cost of that membrane is about 13 million euros, so say about 15 million bucks. This is an interesting amphitheater in Council Bluffs, Iowa. I'm interested in this one more integrated into the landscape. You see the sort of the terrace seating. It also works very successfully as a park. It's a public space. There's a bridge that goes across the river into downtown Omaha. But the key is this sort of 5-acre lawn that works very well as a community amenity. About 6,000 all uncovered for events there. This, I promise this is the craziest one. This is an amphitheater in Korea that is essentially sculpture. You can see it's all built, these sort of terraces that you sit on coming down to the front. So it has a capacity of just a couple of thousand, but it's an interesting sort of built into the landscape. And one more, two more. This is in Clifton Forge, Virginia. It's a smaller amphitheater, only about 500 capacity, but it's built into the landscape. It was actually designed by Virginia Tech architecture students, and it works very well in that park setting. Some permanence around bench seating, but the stage is beautiful and looks terrific there. My last one is this crazy project in Germany. This place called the Grafenegg Castle, I'm sorry, it's in Austria. They have a very successful summer music festival there. It used just to be sitting on the lawn. They've now built this amphitheater that converts just to a sort of a public amenity and resting space when it's not in use. So lots of interesting changes and trends in this world of public facilities. Now let's come back to Clearwater and look at the market you have. We struggled with this question of how far do most people travel to get to an event in downtown Clearwater? The way that we sorted that out finally was doing this mapping exercise. And this is from 4 events. This is ZZ Top, Bryan Adams, George Clinton, and Sea Blue. So we mapped the distribution of ticket buyers, and that 50-mile radius got us 65% of the audience. I think we could go out a little bit further, but we wouldn't really capture more because the other 35% are either seasonal residents, not based here, or visitors coming in. So we decided to look at that 50-mile ring. What's so interesting about it to me is, first, the Clearwater population growing to 125,000 by 2024. But if you look at that 50-mile radius, you will be approaching a 4 million permanent population by 2024. I had no idea that the area was that dense and populated now. Characteristics that we're interested in. The best predictor of arts participation is educational attainment. How far you go in school generally predicts how you participate in and this is more the traditional performing arts, so going to the symphony and the ballet and the opera. You have relatively low levels of educational attainment on the part of permanent residents. There's fewer with graduate degrees and fewer with bachelor's degrees. I should just note on all these charts, the orange bar is Clearwater, the red bar is that 50-mile radius, and the blue bar is the USA. So just for comparison purposes, right? So you see the orange bar up at the top, less than 50 miles in the country. Household income distribution, again, Clearwater has fewer households with a household income of greater than 150,000. Also the case in the next income category down, and lots of folks with a household income of less than 25,000 and in that 25 to 50,000 range. The next chart shows there is a growth in that income, but it's still, in Clearwater, that income still staying substantially below the 50-mile radius income and the national household income. Age distribution, not a surprise here, a significant chunk of the population, 65 plus, even more so in Clearwater than in the 50-mile radius, which I thought was interesting, and not so many kids, 17 and unders, and also the 18 to 24s. In terms of race and ethnicity, there is a significant Hispanic population here, close to the national average, and also an African-American population that approaches the national average as well. Similar with language spoken at home, that Spanish-speaking population in the 50-mile radius matches the national profile. We didn't do as well as collecting information about seasonal residents, I'm afraid, in our 2-week span, and if anybody has a great data source that tells us about the demographics of people who live here part-time, I'd love to get it. But we do know anecdotally, this pie chart is showing us that about 9% of City of Clearwater housing units are sort of occupied seasonally, recreationally, or occasionally. So maybe that's our seasonal population count. Not that big. I think it's significantly bigger going out a little bit further. But we do know that's an old segment also in terms of age. It's a higher income segment and it's a higher education segment. So it is kind of a prime group for us in terms of an audience. We did get pretty good information on visitors to Clearwater and the region. So 5.23 rooms sold in 2017, coming as couples or families. They're coming for the beach and because of the weather. 12% of them surveyed attended a festival or special event, so we're in there somewhere with our facility. Many of them have been here before, and most of them do not feel that any improvements are needed to enhance the visitor experience, so they're not clamoring for more. I would always contend that the tourism business is intensely competitive, and you always have to be offering more in order to hold on to your market share. The mean age, 53, so a little bit younger, but good 92,000 in mean household income, lots from Florida, but also the rest of the country. Then we did this other exercise, which was a lot of sort of counting in order to make a simple point. So we compared Tampa, St. Pete, Clearwater with 3 other metropolitan areas to look at who had more or less amphitheaters, and not just the number of amphitheaters, but we estimated the number of seats in each venue, so we could say something about seats per capita, right? So, and in this case, it's not physical seats standing, a lawn seat is a seat, right? So we looked at Denver, San Diego, and Charlotte as MSAs. Your MSA population is the second biggest of that group. The other venues have 5, 6, and 3 outdoor venues. The total capacity of those, you have 34,400. They have 42, 35, and 37. So on a per capita basis, and that includes Coachman Park as it is today with its 15,000 seat capacity. So the point is that you are not overserved in this idea of changing that park out to the new amphitheater or band shell, still has you at a market capacity range within what these other communities do. Right? So there's not a gross sort of under count nor over count. You're pretty much in the range as you are now. Sorry for the small print, but this is just more information at your leisure on the different amphitheaters in those comparable markets. The one thing I'd note is that there's about 18 on there, and only 2 of them have covered seating. Lots of lawn seating and some uncovered seating. So our market analysis leads us to conclude the market is large and growing. Significant differences between full-timers, seasoners, and visitors suggest the need for a segmented approach to programming and marketing. Meaning it's not one show that's going to get everyone there. You have to do different kinds of programs and market them differently in order to attract the diversity of the market. There's some opportunity for culturally and linguistically specific programs. Visitors traveling for beach and weather, that segment is attractive in 2 ways. One, when it's an act that people will travel to see, if it's, you've got ZZ Top fans who will get on a plane and come, so a destination level act. But also we see in our business, it's hard to get visitors to come to a venue, but when you have sort of a destination like the park with multiple amenities and things to do, that becomes a significant tourist destination. So we love the idea of this park within the larger Imagine Clearwater development as a tourism development tool. Comparable markets, that analysis suggests to us that the region has the capacity to support the new amphitheater within the current inventory. All right. Then we did another analysis. This is basically every 2,000 plus capacity amphitheater and bandshell in Florida. We were interested in seeing what it's out there, which ones are covered, and fixed seating. We're also interested in this idea of routing. So that what are the amphitheaters if there's a particular act on the road, if they go there, we can get them here. And what do we have to have physically in order to get that same act to come to Clearwater and then move on. So these are the local venues with our sort of the venue in Tampa, mid-Florida, 19,900 total with 10,000 covered and 10,000 lawn essentially. There's our 12.5 for Coachman Park and Janus Live. Now, the next 2 are all of these other regional facilities, and I'm going from the largest capacity down. So you see there's a few up at the 20,000 level. It drops quickly to 10,000 and under for total capacity. Remember this, I need to keep reminding myself of this, not to get too hung up on the fixed seated capacity, I'm sorry, not fixed, seated capacity versus lawn capacity. In many of these cases, it's the total capacity that's the number that matters more than the seated capacity. So you'll see in that first page of that 12 or so venues, 5 of them have covers. There's lots of, under that flexible seating column, you'll see only a few Ys, meaning flexibility in the venue itself. Most are owned by cities. There's a bunch of them that have private operators like SMG, Live Nation, and so on. The next page shows 5,000 seats down. Again, only a couple that have covered seating, limited flexibility, and down in the lower capacity ones, they tend to be operated by local government rather than the private operator. The next exercise was sort of understanding how the current Coachman Park is used. This is a chart that shows 2018 use by various groups. It includes a couple of the presented events. Terrific, you got George Clinton, but then all the other festivals like jazz and the Holiday Carnival and the Boat Parade and the Blues Festival. That was 28 days of events. What's significant is that 103, beside that, that's the number of days you had to spend erecting and dismantling. So you got 28 days of use, but you spent a heck of a lot more time putting this place together and pulling it back apart again. Then with all the community groups, we tried to get at what they want going forward. So we interviewed these guys and talked about how much they would use it and what capacity range. So it doesn't include everyone who was in there last year. These were everyone we were able to meet. So it's 18 days of use. They were interested in the bandshell, of course, a proper covered stage. Only one of them really wanted seating, and only one of them was interested in cover. The capacity range for them is generally sort of, there's a lot in that 7,000 to 9,000 range, and a little bit under that. The tricky one there is the Jazz Festival. Their attendance has been in that 6 to 9. Their existing event attendance has been in that range. In their discussing with us, they're interested in a total capacity approaching 15,000. So we have to figure out how to reconcile that. So then we have Ruth Eckert Hall that's come forward as a potential promoter. They did some events in Coachman Park. They've said 20 events potentially a year. They are saying that they need and want 3,000 to 4,000 seated capacity undercover. Live Nation and EEG, we've had sort of some contact with. They're interested in presenting, interested in routing, very concerned about the gun laws and the prospect of that in the park, but generally interested. And then there are local, regional promoters who we think have the opportunity to bring more culturally specific programs to the venue.
Mr. Webb, let me interrupt you there so that our city attorney can explain this gun thing that you brought up, or can you do that?
I'm going to come back to it a little bit later on.
Oh, okay.
Make some more comments
Okay.
on that. So, all right, so just based on what we've seen on the market thing, let's sort of think about seating capacity. So there are these sort of boutique venues that have sort of 3,000 to 5,000 total capacities. Only one of those has sort of covered seating. Our thinking is that the seated component of the venue, we could probably bring that down a little bit into that 2,500 to 3,000 range. There's no, in terms of local and regional venues, there's a gap there that we're filling with this venue that we think makes sense. And let me also say something about lawn capacity. So the comparable venues have indicated in the research we've done, and you'll see some more as I keep going here, they say that flexibility is the key to success for their venue. Lawn and flexible seating allows operators to do different things, festivals, community gathering, fitness classes, live entertainment events. And the reality is that these lawn seating folks are also likely to be food and beverage consumers, which, as I'll talk about a little bit later, is, we think, really the key sort of revenue driver for venues like this. So our sense is that the lawn capacity could be closer to 10,000, but we wouldn't want that to reduce the park size. Right? The park size is terrific, and we wouldn't want that lawn capacity to limit that. And then we still have to sort out with the Jazz Festival how to accommodate them. So in conclusion of the first part of this, there is a market opportunity for a band shell or an amphitheater. So we think that the amphitheater concept works from a market perspective and supports some community goals. We think that the original concept works from a market perspective and supports other community goals. So in fact, what we're going to put forward today is a slightly different concept that also works from a market perspective that responds to more community goals. So that's where we're headed. So let me talk about those two existing concepts and then introduce the third. So the original band shell concept, the functionality was sort of could occasionally be used for community events and touring entertainment. There's a gentle slope down to the band shell that supports, you get relatively good sight lines, but still supports other park activities. The capacity was going to be as many seats that are needed for specific events. Total capacity as high as 18,000. That was what I saw in the Imagine Clearwater report at that point. Small stage, it actually, it's not that small a stage. It's 2,400 square feet, which is a pretty good stage size for a range of events. A minimal tech, the idea being that most of the tech, sound and lighting comes with touring product. Temporary food and beverage outlets brought in for events, permanent and temporary restrooms. So the challenges around this, what's the risk and financial downside of not covering the audience? Is the stage and audience area large enough to attract the performers the community wants? And what about this sort of idea of portable seating? So to answer those, I'm going to tell a few more detailed stories about existing amphitheaters around the country. This is in Simsbury, Connecticut, suburban. Hartford population is 25,000. The city built the structure, and they tried to operate it for a while. Then they turned it over to a 501c3. I've done some work for them, so I know them fairly well. It's a tiny organization with a full-time staff of one. But the board, everyone on the board is out there at every event selling tickets and doing security and everything. It's a very sort of roll up your sleeves, make the place kind of work. And it has been successful for what it is. So you see before the stage was built, it was just a big recreational park, soccer and lacrosse and everything. So they built the stage at one end of the park. Okay. So they get, in a typical season there, 5 performances by the Hartford Symphony, 2 or 3 commercial performances. So they're not getting a lot of, the big pop acts. The problem for them there is that there's bigger venues in Hartford and in Oakdale, not far away, that really get the big commercial entertainment. So they don't get a lot of that. They have a blues festival, food festivals, flea markets. It's the start and finish for a lot of community runs and rides, so 30 events a year. Their total operating budget is $400,000, and last year they showed a surplus of $12,000. So they made a tiny little bit of money. They are close to the historic Main Street of Simsbury. They have a very sort of strange relationship with the merchants, even though all these people showing up to events are spending money. The merchants get very mad about losing their parking because everyone who's coming to an event parks in their parking lot. So there's always been sort of tension around that idea. The great thing that they've done is you can't really see it in this slide. It's not really better there. There's a kind of a wall that's 2 feet tall that is a semicircular outside around the stage, and inside that wall, in front of the stage, you can put theater seats or tables and chairs. So for all the Hartford Symphony events, that's what they do. And it's premium VIP seating. They serve a full meal to the people sitting up there, and they and the symphony together make lots of money doing that. In case of bad weather, they've had a couple of rain dates historically, but they don't do that anymore. They find that people have made a plan to come. It's very difficult to adjust that plan to the next night. Some of the acts have purchased insurance, but that they don't really recommend doing that. So they try and track the weather. They've got sort of folks sort of keeping an eye on lightning and storms coming in. And last year, only one event was impacted, and it ended halfway through the event. They are installing these sound towers that you see here are temporary. They build those at the beginning of each year. They're now buying and installing permanent towers so that they don't have to deal with taking those down and putting them up. When the park, here it is, the Hartford Symphony does a 4th of July performance there. When the park is not in use, it is a park. Again, there's still soccer games and lacrosse and people walking their dogs and so on. Coca Booth is a terrific amphitheater in Cary, North Carolina. It's more of the bandshell concept, really, because it's just the stage structure. The seating is this long. It is owned by the city, operated by SMG, to whom they pay sort of a management fee. So in there every year they've got 10 symphony dates, 12 to 13 national concerts. They had Vance Gill last year and Paul Simon the year before, so they're getting good acts to the building. It's an open venue, meaning multiple promoters can bring their acts there. It's not an exclusive relationship. 6 food festivals and a number of cultural festivals, an Indian festival, and the biggest single draw there every year is the Chinese Lantern Festival. They do high school music festivals. They do a summer film series. There are runs that begin and end there. So there's about 50 events a year. There's a staff of a dozen, but they're not on the town payroll. They're on the SMG payroll. So the cost of the town in 2018 was net $350,000. In other years, it's been as low as about $150,000, but so $150,000 to $350,000 as an annual cost of the year. The city staff that I spoke with there say, the city council is more than happy to pay that. The councilors, whenever they bring people to town, they bring them to the park to show off the amphitheater. They get huge value out of it in terms of being a community amenity and asset. I've got a couple more good pictures. Here it is so there's a lake out behind. So you see there's the structure and the lawn extending out to the right. This is from the stage. So the other interesting thing they have there is at the back, you see that structure. That's called the Crescent, and it's their version of sort of a premium seating area. So it's more of a fixed structure. Let's see if I have one more picture of that. Oh, yeah, there it is. So it's a fixed structure. They're basically front porches. So there's little rooms, enclosed room, and in front of that, like a porch where you put out seats. There's a separate concession area for that. And that does very well for them financially. It's a big part of helping their sustainability. They don't have problems with rain. They say they've only had a couple of events in the past couple of years that have rained out. When the rain comes and they've got people tracking storms, they send people back to their cars, but North Carolina, the weather pattern is usually it's a blow through, as they say, and they come back and the concert resumes when that's over. Interesting that they do have, there was some residential development around there before it was built, and there's been a lot more since it was built. So they're pretty sensitive to noise. There's a decibel limit of 95, 100 feet from the stage, and there's also a 10:30 p.m. curfew. So they're trying to sort of manage that as well. The town does not regret the lack of a cover because they feel it would spoil the beauty of the location. Okay. Closer to home, this is the historic bandshell on Daytona Beach, 80 years old, 4,500 capacity. It's all stone. So apparently what the city does is they rent seats to folks to come who want to sit for performances. They rent lawn chairs. It's owned by the city, operated by their cultural services division. They do 10 community events, 5 days of cheerleading competitions, Jeep Week, and some other events. They don't get a lot of sort of higher end commercial product there. And on the beach, there's limited things you can do sort of physically there, I think. Their operating budget is $350,000. Annual revenue exceeds that a little bit. There's sort of $400,000. So there's the historic structure. So now let's take the amphitheater concept, the thing that evolved from the original concept. So the idea there was to attract more world-class artists and entertainers to Clearwater, bringing audiences from around the region, generating more revenue and driving downtown spending. So the focus was on those large music events. The idea, most recently, plus or minus 3,500 seats undercover, maximum capacity 15,000. The seats can all be moved, but the rake is fixed. Right? Large permanent covered stage. The actual stage isn't bigger than it was in the Banshee concept. It's still about 2,400 square feet, but more investment in VIP, concession, some restroom buildings. And the other thing that's popped up is that Ruth Eckerd Hall has suggested that they have an outside partner who might contribute capital to the amphitheater development project, depending on arrangements. They're wanting a more, more exclusivity, more sort of the idea of getting some control over the overall thing, and the more they're able to do there, the more likely they are to invest in the capital investment of the amphitheater. So challenges. Does the venue align with the goals of Imagine Clearwater? Can it be profitable? Can it be restored as a park after performance? Will this have an impact on downtown Clearwater? And then the capacity issue. So some more stories. So Pompano Beach. So 3,000, it's all seated. You see that sort of structure. It's basically, because of the rake of the seating, it's isolated from the park behind it. So it doesn't really, it's not like you have lawn seating behind that. It's the rake that you have to get in order to have good sight lines with those fixed seats of the stage, sort of dictate that it is what it is. And then the concessions are in that sort of back wall that sort of opens up for food and beverage. So 3,000 fixed, uncovered. They say that they have a lot of trouble attracting big acts there. So they still get 15 to 20 live music shows. They really, a few years ago, they were paying a management company about $800,000 to run it and not getting anything back. So they spent a lot of money. They finally realized that wasn't necessarily a smart thing. We helped them write an RFP that put AEG in place and the operator. So they're spending a little bit now, a lot less than the 800,000, but it's still a little bit of a net cost to them. And in fact, now they're talking about moving from a single promoter to the idea of an open venue where you could have multiple promoters presenting. Their complaint with AEG was that they just weren't getting enough shows, and they were disappointed with the amount of activity that the venue was getting. They don't get a lot of sound complaints. The great sort of bureaucratic response: when there's a complaint filed, the police are dispatched to the location, and they measure the sound at that point, by which time the concert is generally over. So that's not working so well. But what is interesting is the city has allocated $3.5 million to put a cover over the amphitheater. They're going to do that. Okay. Here's a couple more images of the amphitheater. It's not a beautiful venue. Here's Anthrax performing there recently. Not high quality stuff. All right, Cynthia Woods Mitchell Pavilion is really one of my favorite amphitheaters in the country. I have worked with these guys historically. This is really one of the great models of a community amphitheater. They opened probably, I think it's 25 years ago. The Woodlands is a planned community north of Houston, right? So they built this amphitheater specifically to build awareness of their community. This is a way to sort of become known in the Houston region. So the amphitheater was built for that reason. It was originally meant to be the home of the summer home of the Symphony Opera Ballet, but then would also bring in a commercial touring product. It's a 12-acre site to get all of that on. 6,500 covered seats and lawn seating for another 10,000. Because of the original purpose, there's a full orchestra pit for the ballet opera to use, but they use it now occasionally more as a mosh pit and less so as an orchestra pit. The building comes to life in many ways. 43 contemporary entertainment events, and they are promoted by Live Nation. So there's a deal with Cynthia Woods Mitchell Pavilion and Live Nation to bring that commercial entertainment to the building, and they are sharing risk. So the Live Nation sort of attracts and pays for the acts, and the building brings the building and all the staffing and support, and they split the proceeds of that together. So in addition to that, there's 15 performing arts groups, symphony, ballet, opera, but not as much was originally planned. Some rentals to big churches and high school graduations. They believe that 38 out of those sort of 40 or so shows every year make money on a net basis, so the direct revenues minus direct cost equals sort of net. But what they contend is that the way that they make money on these shows is through the food and beverage operations. It's, the artist fee and promotion matches the gate, and it's the food and beverage that really sort of drives the revenue in the facility. They also have an event center next door that does smaller rentals. Their operating budget, remember some of the smaller ones, but their operating budget is $42 million a year, because that includes all the ticket sales of the events. But they also have a full-time staff of 30 people. So they've got a building next door that they run, fully developed staff, plus 325 seasonal staff as well. They say that of that $40 million budget, $42 million budget, the earned revenue component is 40. So the annual fundraising nut for the Woodlands is $2 million. And again, the Woodlands, which is now a township, soon to be a city, is happy to pay that $2 million annually because of what they get in their community as an amenity, quality of life, building sort of the brand, and so on. They don't, all shows are rain and shine with the cover. They don't have any walk-up business anymore. They're not so concerned. They do get no shows on a bad weather night. Last year they had two shows that were interrupted. The crowd stayed, and the show went on. Their rain issue, the thing they're more concerned about is longer-term damage to the lawn with sort of days of rain. The only shows they've actually canceled were because of the hurricane last year, and they had to cancel 4 performances. There is housing close by. They do get occasionally complaints, but those complaints are more about vulgarity than the noise level, just the things that are going on there. They also have allowable decibel limits and a curfew. Here is an overhead shot of the cover and the lawn. Here we are looking out from the stage. And now St. Augustine. So here's an amphitheater. I think this one has been brought to you before. I think you've seen several of these examples before, but St. Augustine has been brought to you as a successful, profitable amphitheater. So it's owned and operated by the county. It is open. It's an open venue, again, multiple promoters. 4,900 seats, 3,300 of which are undercover, and another 1,600 not covered. So note the much steeper rake of this venue. It's not like our lawn seating venues. It's a steeper rake in order to, so all those people inside the structure of the amphitheater itself. What's interesting there is that they have 2 other venues with it, a backyard, which is a uncovered 1,000 capacity venue behind the main, and then what they call the front porch, a large deck that hosts 200 to 300 people. They do lots of lots of VIP things, comprehensive food and beverage operations, weekly farmers market on the front porch, 40 live entertainment events a year. It doesn't really work for outside community rentals. The sort of the cost to get in there and on the stage is substantial, and there is no, it's not a part of a park because of that rake. It's like Pompano Beach. It's sort of its isolated structure. Their budget is about $14 million, and in 2018 the is that the county, I think, made from them about 1.1 million. And that's the first year after the expansion of that venue. So the first year, they're budgeting in coming years break even, but they're hoping they can do better than that. Okay. This is one of the other venues where there's a firearm issue. If the event is a rental, buyout, or co-promotion, the firearms policy there is that it's Live Nation to decide whether guns are allowed or not, and they're not. That was significant. There's underneath, there's the front porch and that other venue. So now what we're saying is let's consider a slightly modified concept. So from the original ban shell concept, let's push capacity, functionality, flexibility, and technical capabilities in order to support some of these large events that you want to get, while trying to minimize the scale and impact of the facility so as to honor the park concept. Sounds easy. And we're going to now start talking about how difficult that is to do. So we want to support not just performances, but community events as well as the large touring events. So again, maybe we can push that seated capacity down a little bit under 3,000, 2,500. And we're good in terms of total capacity with 10,000, although I wouldn't want to compromise the overall sort of park concept in doing that. So the other thing we can do is explore the integration of the structures into the park, looking at flexible seating systems, a flat floor component, retractable elements, and pop-up amenities and stage. The challenges around that is the technology, and this is the key one, is the technology sufficiently advanced to support flexible seating systems and a retractable roof in a cost-effective manner? So I'm going to show you some more examples, but again, can it be done in a cost-effective way? Can those amphitheater elements be sufficiently minimized so as not to compromise the park concept? Do the operating costs associated with preparing the venue for a performance make it prohibitively expensive? I mean, can we get around the problems that you've historically had of sort of building up the current amphitheater into a proper stage and the labor costs associated? And then, can these facilities deal with a wide range of community events? So here's a great example of an attempt to do that. This is in Addison, Texas, suburban Dallas. It's called Addison Theater Park. It's a flexible mixed-use park, 370,000 square feet in total. Water and electrical hookups are throughout the site, and there are 3 distinct performance areas that can be built up for performances. They have big events like Taste of Addison, Oktoberfest, concerts, movies, and art shows. This is the entire park. So the ellipse is that picture I just showed, and you'll see the site for the big stage there. When that stage is not in use, it looks like that. So the entire stage disappears. All of the backstage and stage support functions are underneath, built into it, as well as all the power requirements and so on. And here is the lawn being used for performances, community events. So it's managed by the town. The whole park is zoned as an event space, which is significant in terms of how it gets used. And all the city events at the park are subsidized by a hotel motel tax fund, so they've got a specific funding stream. Here's one more showing the public art and fountains also on the park site. Meisner Park, I'm sure some of you have been there in Boca Raton. This venue has been struggling forever. I was over there trying to help them 20 years ago, trying to figure out how to make this thing work. They had a nonprofit running it for a while. Now it's owned and operated by the city. There was previously an exclusive relationship, as I understand, with Live Nation. Now it's an open venue. 3,600 temporary seats and 4,200 standing room. So they get 5 to 6 live music concerts promoted by one of the big guys. The city gets a per ticket charge on that. 3 live music events promoted by a local group, 15 days for festivals, 15 days for community rentals, 10 days of other city-presented events. So an annual operating budget of about $1 million, and they gain a little bit back on the bottom line. I'll get to that in a sec. Covered seating, what they're doing now is they're putting a tent over the facility. You see it in that image. This one's better. So the performing arts groups like the symphony have said, we really need a cover for our audience. So every year, they're renting this tent, and for $420,000 a year, they put the tent up for a 2-month period when they have all those performing arts events. The city charges the users an extra $2,000 a day to try and recover some of that money. Interestingly now, the city has received a bid for a retractable roof. The cost is $9 million. They don't have to cancel events. They've only done it sort of a couple of times. They don't think that a covering would help them so much. It's more of these sort of the traditional performing arts audiences wanting that cover. For city-sponsored events, firearms are allowed with proper permits. So this is another place that has a similar issue than you do. The city attorney determined that they can do a screening, and police officer manages, sort of checks the permits, offers a place to store guns. Okay. When it's not in use, there's really, it's a daily gathering place, but it doesn't really serve as a park venue. There's a big yoga class going on in the park. And finally, Ascend Amphitheater. So this is a newer project in Nashville, owned by the city, 10-year contract with Live Nation, 2,300 temporary seats, 4,500 lawn seats. The park was originally, it was going to be a downtown greenspace. City said it would be park first. And when the contract was awarded to the operator, they said the site would be always a park first. But since then, there's been a lot of tension in the community because it essentially isn't operating as a park. It's a concert venue with limited access and availability. So the rentals are rare because the minimum charges for them to get in are beyond community resources. The city does pay, the operator pays about $400,000 plus a portion of ticket and concession sales to Nashville. They were thinking of covered seating, but didn't do it. What they do have there is that temporary seating on the front part. So it all comes out for specific performances and goes away. Weather is rarely a problem. They have had lots of issues with sound complaints in the neighborhood, and they've just installed apparently this very sophisticated sound monitoring system that's had a big impact on bringing the sound down when it needs to be brought down and reducing community complaints. So that's just, well, here's a view from the stage of Ascend, and here it is, sort of lawn seating out there. Here it is without any seats. So you'll see it's still the back part of it has some slope, but it's still theoretically, could be a park setting. So the issue has come up throughout all of this around the profitability of amphitheaters. What do you potentially get as a city when you do this? So we've collected as much as we could in 2 weeks how these venues do. So it's a little bit different for every venue, how we've calculated this, but basically St. Augustine, the county in 2018 got $1.1 million. Now remember, that includes 2 other venues, and it also includes revenues from parking. The Ascend Amphitheater that I just mentioned in Nashville, $400,000, but I would contend that they're politically paying a price for that the community is not necessarily thrilled with the way that's been going. Daytona Beach, they make 56 net, the city. Pompano Beach, with its new deal with AEG, made a little bit of money last year. Simsbury, my staff of one, got a $12,000 budget on a $12,000 profit on a $35,000 budget. Cocoa Booth, they invested, the city invested about $350,000. Pompano Beach, when they had that terrible deal, was paying about 800 grand. Bayfront in Miami, through the Park Trust, is paying 1.9 million in support of that amphitheater. And Cynthia Woods, even though their earned income is 97% of their budget, there's still an annual fundraising requirement of $2 million. So that's where we get. So two other things. Again, these outside threats that I would encourage you to sort of take a position on this. One is the presence of guns. So we did talk about it with various users and promoters and others. There is a lot of concern about for promoters bringing their product here and the prospect of having guns out there, but you are doing it now. The other thing we heard from several of the groups is there has to be a workaround, quote unquote. There has to be a way around this problem. What can it be? So, I think you've already worked pretty hard at this question, so I'm not sure how much further you can go with that, but that's sort of the challenge that's been laid out. The other threat is, and just something that we heard a lot in our interviews, is the increasing traffic and road congestion might dissuade ticket buyers, so ways that you can address that with the county, essentially. So, in summary, covered seats, excellent tech, sound and lighting, rigging, and so on. Expanded backstage will attract strong promoters who will book higher-level artists, who will attract regional audiences, who will positively affect downtown Clearwater, right? Better facility, promoters, artists, audiences, downtown. The fully developed amphitheater serving a range of community goals, meaning the other things beyond driving revenue, we don't think is likely to generate significant profits for the city. The key driver, and again, remember, is from the discussion about food and beverage operations. So not only do you have to invest in the stage and the backstage and the cover, you've got to really have the food and beverage operations to really drive that net revenue. The latest seating plan and cover we think can be reduced slightly. More importantly, there should be a deeper exploration of the opportunities for temporary, flexible, and retractable elements so as to enhance the park-like setting when the amphitheater is not in use. This will allow the project to serve the other important goals that came out of the community input process. And also important within that to us is maintaining the slight rate, the thing that allows you to keep using it as a park when it's not in use as an amphitheater. And finally, as I just said, I would encourage you to take a position on those outside threats, dealing with traffic congestion, guns, and so on. This is my final slide. And I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. Do you think that we have fairly described the situation and the prospects for the project? Do you think there's additional information that we need to collect in order to move forward? Then I'm sure as we march through this together, we might talk about the physical planning that's now appropriate to sort of answer some of these questions. And my hope for today is that I get your blessing to finish my work. So I have another 4 weeks to figure out the operational piece. How do you program it? How do you operate it? And how do you financially sustain it? And with that, I'll open it up to questions and comments.
Well, Mr. Webb, thank you very much. We appreciate all the work that you've done on a rather quick basis. But before we go to our questions for you, you've basically been on your feet and talked for about an hour. So why don't we give you a 5-minute break just to catch your breath, and we'll reconvene at 4:10.
Great.
Okay?
Yep.
I'd like to reconvene our special work session. Again, Mr. Webb, thank you very much for that presentation. Council, we need to answer some questions for Mr. Webb.
Who wants to start?
Mr. Cundiff.
Mr. Webb, thank you so much for your input today, your wisdom, your guidance. I have two questions off the top of my head. You suggested that an optimum optimum number of seating, 2,500 to 3,000. If St. Pete already has a venue that has 2,000 and Ruth Eckerd Hall has 2,200, shouldn't we be looking at a little larger venue?
Sure.
Where
So,
we might be able to.
right, so there are several reasons why I've talked about the idea of reducing that seating capacity. The first thing is that I want to encourage you to think about the total capacity as being equally important as the seating capacity. The second reason is that we see that a lot of the other venues in Florida and around the country have a split where 2,500 seats undercover seems to work pretty well. Of course, the promoters are going to want more than that because that's better that helps them make more money. The other thing is that, I've introduced this very complicated idea of retractable elements. Whether, moving seating, finding a smart way to move seating in and out, thinking about this idea of a retractable cover. And my suspicion is that the fewer seats you're trying to do that with, the easier and less cost prohibitive it might be. So I'm trying to encourage the design team to explore that because maybe it's possible in terms of capital costs. The other reason I've just left it as that range, 2,500 to 3,000, is that the second part of my work is writing the operating budget. So I want to be able to drill down on that issue within the operating budget. But my short answer is I don't think that dropping those seats will prevent you from getting the acts that you want to get.
Could I ask one more question? My second question is about sound. Will covered seating help to reduce the overall volume necessary for the shows?
Yes, it helps. You have less sound than inside the cover. You still have the folks outside, so you still have to have the same speakers going out beyond the covered area. So if it was just an event of seats under cover, the sound level can come down quite substantially. But if you've still got people out on the lawn, the sound has to get to them.
That was an extremely comprehensive amount of information study in 2 weeks. A lot of valuable stuff. There were several things that stood out for me, so I'm going to go specifically straight to a few questions regarding the footprint, the entire size of the stage. I think you said current band show was 2,400, and that whether it's an amphitheater band show, whichever direction we go, that 2,400 you thought would be enough. Was that after conversations with the Florida Orchestra, 2,400?
I think the plan was that came out before, which was based on discussions with the orchestra, that stage size was good. Can I look at Hamid and say, yes, so they were consulted on that stage.
Yeah, because if we can seat on a regular basis the Florida Orchestra comfortably in back of house,
Right.
then pretty much we can do any show. So I wanted to make sure that was a consideration. Secondly, the seating number, and I'm going to ask a few questions off of the same kind of direction Mr. Cundiff went, and you gave some explanation, and it was a matter of balance. And I want to go back to our conversation when I suggested to you scale, the size and scale of this pavilion band show with the entire Coachman Park. And I'm going to go to just a couple examples, the Cynthia Woods and the St. Augustine. How many acres is Cynthia Woods total park? And then the percentage of their, and what also interesting to note, I think, what they wanted to accomplish in Houston, they wanted a signature iconic, which is very similar to what we're trying to do. Now, I'm not even suggesting anything that large, although the numbers aren't that off, but the scale is really important to me. The scale, the entire park they have, and what was their massing for their.
So I specifically asked at the Woodlands, the size for the stage, covered, and the lawn is 12.5 acres.
Okay, I wrote the 12. I didn't know if that was, how about the entire park? They don't have the same
I just wanted,
situation.
how much room do you need for the stage, the backstage, and the audience area?
But is there adjoining part, like,
Yeah,
ours is going to occupy a little piece of Coachman Park.
Right, no, there's, in the Woodlands, there's other parkland around it, but also parking. They're not that far from commercial development. So there's a little bit of extra space, not that much more.
Okay, so basically their whole park is Cynthia Woods.
Yeah, it's dominated by that space.
Our park is going to be really a dedicated certain amount of space for the entertainment area, and then the rest of it is, which is substantially a large footprint. So to me, scale is really important. And so when you consider whether it's 2,500, 3,000, 3,500, would that scale of, say, something even the size of, let's scale down to St. Augustine question, the percentage of, how many acres, somebody refresh my memories, our Coachman Park?
63 acres altogether.
Yeah, so St. Augustine entire footprint, how many acres is theirs with their covered seating?
Not sure. Sure, it's, it's probably only 3 or 4.
You say the point I'm getting at is we have a huge park that is going to be continually programmed and have community citizen access, whether it's connecting to the Pinellas Trail, water access, estuary, it is going to be huge. So to me, it was a matter of scale. What percentage will this entertainment piece of this total park occupy in this park? Because I think that's important for citizens to understand. And if we're cutting back the seating to 2,500 to balance the concerns with the citizenry and the cost of a retractable roof, which I don't when you talk about scale, the total park, I don't find. First of all, I'm sure feasibly you gave one instance where they're going back now, and especially all the concert venues, they're covering their seatings. And if they're coming back and spending $9 million to put a retractable roof in, that doesn't make any sense to me for us to even consider doing that. So if the compromise in the 2,500 seating is based upon that, part of that, because the retractable roof would be cheaper to cover that many, it's like, what are we compromising by cutting back on the seating? We don't want to lose that to St. Pete, because we've been told by we've been told by several folks that if we don't build this right, St. Pete, Tampa, those who are already enjoying huge economic stimulus, they're going to build it, and then we will miss this market. So I'm not sure the 2,500 is good. It might work, and we may fill it all the time, but where are we now 5-10 years into the future? So I had a couple other questions. The total acreage. Can I reserve the right to come back? I want to think about some of the. I mean, did you want to comment on?
No.
Okay.
Carry on.
Okay.
Mr. Hamill?
Well, I mean, when this first started, if I remember correctly, I was somewhere around a 3,000 seat number, but the Woodlands facility, my younger son lives in the Woodlands,
Great.
and I know it well, and it's it's big. It's bigger than we would want in Coachman Park, but I think, are we going back to what Councilmember Cundiff said, and I look at it differently, and tell me if I'm wrong. Yes, Ruth Eckerd Hall seats 2,500. Mahaffey seats a little over 2,000, I believe it is. But we're not competing on an outdoor amphitheater with what Ruth Eckerd's trying to program at Ruth Eckerd specifically. A 2,500, someone who's going to sell 2,500 seats, of course, depending on time of year, is probably going to, be preferable to be indoors at Ruth Eckerd Hall. Someone who can sell more than 2,500 seats is what's going to be looking at our venue here, because it's not a 2,500 seat venue, it's 25 to 3,000 seats covered, which would be your premium seats, higher ticket cost, and then the lawn itself to be able to put your larger number capacity on. Am I missing something there?
No, that's right.
I mean, they're not really competing. We're not competing. Coachman Park will not compete with Ruth Eckerd, in my mind, with the facility of Ruth Eckerd and the facility of Mahaffey, just because our covered seat number is in the same ballpark as what they provide.
Different experience. And again, our contention is that the trend in these facilities is away from, just the traditional fixed seating amphitheaters to amphitheaters that have more flexibility and more options. And particularly for younger people, the way that they want to experience these events is different. They want to be able to move around, they want to dance, they want to do different things. And so we're stressing the total capacity number of 10,000 to us is equally important as the number of seats that you have under a cover.
And I'm a little cautious in your presentation, and I look forward to getting into the no gun discussion, but you also relied or suggested fairly heavily that the profitability of it falls to food and beverage, or could fall towards food and beverage.
Right.
Historically, for us, everything has been done by outside vendors, and the city does not participate in the revenue of the food and beverage of the events, to my knowledge.
Sell booths.
Yeah, so it's yeah. How would you suggest the food and beverage be managed where we would participate in the revenues?
So that's the work over the next month.
That's
We'll
the
figure
next
that
one.
out, is how do you have some kind of a license agreement or something, because the city does have to get you've got to get a share of that revenue.
And we do receive quite in the 2017, 2018 concerts, or the Ruth Eckerd concerts, Sea Blues, we did receive food and beverage in those.
How much do we charge a vendor to have a booth at a?
I don't have that information, but we'll have it at the next meeting, certainly when Duncan comes back.
Okay.
Mr. Albrecht?
Well, a couple of things I want to discuss, and since we're talking about it, the food and beverage, I always visualize this as not having the same kind of food and beverage as Jazz Holiday or the Sea Blues Festival, where they bring, have the food vendors down there, because this is something that's going to me, it's always been something that will help downtown restaurants and people. So, by the time we figure out where we're going to be putting a parking garage, it's going to bring people through downtown to go to this event, and then they'll be coming back afterwards. So, my idea, at least I'm not thinking that we're going to have a big food and beverage contingent, because I want the downtown to be able to profit from that. This is a lot different than a lot of the ones you've shown, because we're on I saw that you're on the beach on some of those, but we're on a bay, on a bluff, and right in our downtown. And when Harborview gets torn down next month, people are going to see this. It's just going to open wide up to this new venue that we've been imagining for a couple of years now, that's Imagine Clearwater. And to me, it's not a venue that's out in the woods somewhere, like some of the ones that you showed us. It's not off. It is right in our downtown. And I think part of the draw is not going to be just who we have playing there, but I see a lot of different types of things going on down there, and people will come just to say, hey, let's go see a sunset and listen to some music, right on the water. And that's our biggest, at least to me, it's always been the wow part of this whole thing. So I think if we're looking to try to make money, that we ought to not be looking on the food and the beverage part of it. We can have some of that down there for the convenience during the show, that people can get something, but we don't want to take away anything from downtown. At least that's my thought.
Any other questions?
Yeah,
let me get some clarification too. Let's talk about the stage for a moment. You said 2,400 square feet is what we have currently at the, and the new stage is going to be 2,400 square feet. But the wings that we were talking about, is that included in that 2,400 or?
No. So,
So we were just, the 2,400 was just the stage, the performing area.
correct.
And then the back of the house and the wings were extra.
They're in addition to that.
Okay, okay. And you mentioned a couple of times, and I think I'm hearing that we're disagreeing, or some of us are disagreeing about the flexibility in terms of why do people come to an event? And what kind of an event are you going to have? If you're going to have a paid event, people are going to come because they're going to pay for the artist, at least in my opinion. And they're not necessarily, you said something about people come early, they stay late. So I guess our dilemma is how do we encourage them to take advantage of what Mr. Albritton was saying, but at the same time entice them to come to the event and help us offset some of our costs.
Well, you are bound to have flexibility because of the charter restrictions. You cannot have seating that sits permanently. It has to move in and out. So we already know that. So the trick is to develop seating systems and ways where it's easy to move it in and out, and even where there's flexibility within that. So wouldn't it be great if you could have, in some cases, a flat floor in front of some of the seating in case, for dancing or whatever, or, the start of a bike race or whatever. I think the ability to have flexible seating is critically important. For a Florida orchestra performance, that audience will want to sit in seats, no question. What we might be able to get them to do, as often happens in other classical music venues, is that they've picnicked on the lawn before the performance or eaten in downtown before the performance, but then they want to come and sit in the fixed seats during the show.
In my mind, I'm thinking that this area is not going to be something that you're going to come and just watch a sunset when there's an event going on, because why am I going to pay to go watch for the sunset on a Saturday when on a Friday or on a Thursday I can come down and it's an open venue? Mm-hmm. So I think we need to keep in mind the flexibility is the key to all of this, and not put something that is too large. And while I understand where you were going, Mr. Poglaze, I think we can get too big, because that's going to be all that you're going to see initially, and it's got to be inviting, in my opinion.
And with regards to the cost of building that, sort of the retractable and the flexible elements, I did quote a couple of sort of exorbitant price tags, or adding a roof or doing a retractable roof. Those are projects where they're coming in after the fact to try and do something that wasn't originally in the design. My hope is that you will at least allow your design team to explore a little bit of what's possible on this site as a part of the design going in. How they're going to deal with the flexible seating, the idea of some retractability on the roof, and some way that you can have food and beverage sometimes, but not all the time, sort of impacting the site. All those things become important.
So help me figure out what kind of answers you want us to give you. Do you want us to sort of say we would prefer the flexibility, or you want us to tell you to go back to the other?
Yeah, I would like you to say, keep up with your work and write a business plan for what my concept is 2,500 to 3,000 seats for the seated capacity, and then flexibility, and then lawn capacity up to 10,000. So that's all the direction I need.
Sounds like music in my ears, but Mr. Albritton.
Okay, well, a couple of things come to mind here. Back to the discussion of the size of the stage. We had some input that, and I think, Dr. Cum, didn't you and I go out and measure that stage when they had the jazz holiday? And what were the dimensions? Was it 80 by, without the wings? You remember what the size of that was?
60 by 40.
Yeah. I would agree with that.
Chris Cook, Parks and Recreation. They had the measurements of what the extension we added, which is a 60 by 40 extension to the existing band shell.
Okay, all right.
With no wings.
Right. and
That's what's there
wings-
right now.
The wings were
This
20
weekend.
by 20, right,
20,
each
correct.
wing?
20 by 20 is correct.
Right, so what's there this weekend is 60 by 40 without the wings.
We're going to have the design guys kind of address some of this.
Good afternoon, Darrell LeBlanc with Stantec, architect. So what we've been proposing are stage sizes that are 60 by 40 with two 20 by 20 foot wings on either side.
Okay, so back to your, you said you were going to, the 2400 was the size of the stage, and if we needed to add on the wings, they would be brought in and added on?
No,
The wings are designed. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Darrell.
that would be an extension of the stage floor. They're just called wings, but they're part of the performance floor.
I was talking about what you're doing now.
They wouldn't be viewed as a temporary thing at this point, at least we haven't talked about that. It's something
we-
that you could bring in and add to it later. It would be there.
He's designed it at this point where they are permanent structures on the side of the stage. So the
Okay,
main
all
stage
right.
and then a
I
20
just
by
wanted to
20
make
on the
sure,
outside.
yeah, because the other thing that I don't really want to see happening is what we do now is bringing in, you know, 2 weeks to put on the jazz holiday with, you know, set up and tear down. I mean, we want to have things there and just kind of go in and have it happen and then be available after that for the public to go back out in the park, so.
Councilmember, that's why we expanded, that's why we added those pieces to it.
Yeah, the last diagram we saw, so you aren't really, that's the way it's going to look. All right.
Because you had a concern about amenities for the performers and, you know.
Yeah, the back of
making sure
house.
We had enough back of house to address.
Okay. Thank you.
Whenever my turn.
Yeah, everything you've talked about is performance out. You're not, your position on our back of house and everything, that's not your purview, correct?
Well,
Or,
my only issue is you have to have the backstage that the artists that you want to get here need.
right,
Yeah, yeah.
exactly.
And, you know, Christopher Sprague, who's your theater consultant, he's advising on that.
Yeah. And we don't want to have mobile homes parked in the back like we have now. We want them to come in and then go and have everything they need there.
I believe Mr. Webb is intending on, when he goes to the second part, the financial feasibility, he'll do it based on having that back of house in it. So all the electrical that occurs, all of the upkeep and maintenance, that'll all be factored into the business plan that he's going to do.
And I think one of the other things that gets lost is, and Micah, correct me if I'm wrong, when you look at the entire Imagine Clearwater plan with all of the park area to, on the north end and the estuary, whatever you want to call it, on the south end and everything else, we haven't taken any of that land away for this project. This project is all fitting within the area that was allotted for it, correct?
That is correct if we move forward with Mr. Webb's proposed because of the slight rake portion.
Right.
Now, if we go to an area where, a situation where we have a tiered seating area or a significant slope, that may dip into those other areas. Based on the direction today, we'll.
I don't know if are we going to get into the significant slope discussion right now? Because I can tell you right now, you're at sea level down there. You can't dig into the ground because you're going to hit water. And to build any significant slope, we're going to have to basically, it's going to wall off the I don't think we can have any significant sloping to it personally. I'm not sure if anybody disagrees with that, but it is going to be what it is. We're not going to be able to build it where when you sit in your seat, you're guaranteed to look over top of the head of the person in front of you. It's just not going to happen. The topography just does not allow for it. So.
Mr. Pogler.
Thank you, Mayor. just to clear it in my mind, the stage that's down there right now this weekend and that will be there next weekend, that is, Chris, is that a 60 by 40, that superstructure that's rented right now? And the conversations with the Florida Orchestra is they can fit fine without that. So our stage would actually, the new proposed stage would be skinnier in the back, but wider in the front. Is that?
My understanding is that the 60 by 40 is not big enough. 60 by 40 with the two 20 by 20 wings is big enough, is my
Okay,
understanding.
because I've heard multiple times, 60 by 40, 2,400 square feet. So if we add the two 20-foot wings, it becomes 80 by 40.
No, it becomes,
60 by 60? Then we're,
no, it's like this.
I mean, 40 by 60 is 2,400 square feet.
Right.
So the wings are something that's going to be added. The new stage will be, what? That's what I'm.
100 feet
this.
across.
Those are
And
20
these
by
are going to be
20.
permanent.
Daryl's got some in.
Okay, well then that's 80 by 40 is what I said.
It's 100.
20 and 20 is 100.
Not all of them.
100.
Oh, 100, okay, I lost 20. So it's actually 100 by 40 then, the new
Correct,
stage?
yes.
Okay, now I'm real good with that.
The wings are not.
Council, I apologize. I wasn't trying to stir up, get us back to worrying
That's a-
about the
it's a-
stage. I just wanted to make
Okay,
sure
no,
that
I just,
2,400
well, I mean, if they want
Yeah.
to program 6 to 8 concerts, we have to make sure, and if they're good, everybody's good. So the other thing I want to do is, so I know I went to weekend festivities last Friday, which was great, by the way, 5,000 people in attendance Friday night. It was fantastic. Great seafood and blues festival. Next weekend, I think we had Sunday night almost 8,000 people in Coachman Park. This coming weekend is sold out, 12,500 tickets. Now, if our total park capacity is going to be 10, we're already downsizing what we want. And I'm just going to suggest to the rest of the council, and I know Mayor, I think we all agree on iconic. I think we all agree on capacity for the future. I think we really have to consider, and I'm not looking for Cynthia Woods, but something more in line with St. Augustine because we have such a massive footprint. Most of the asphalt's going to go away. So iconic is extremely important, and then capacity for the future and offsetting revenues to be able to not put all this on the taxpayers and Parks and Rec. Even if it doesn't pay for itself completely.
Well, I believe the way the lawn is now is that total capacity is 15,000 in the current concept.
18 is what we've had 18 in there and we've turned them away, one in, one out. But I mean, it's shoulder to shoulder. It's not comfortable, but if you go this weekend, you'll see even 12,000 is
But
great.
it's not, I mean, it's not that big of a, I don't think you have to, the idea of me saying 10,000 is probably okay. It's not a big deal to be offering 15,000 or 18,000 because the fact is it's a park when it's not in use, and it isn't like it's removed from park use if it's within. So, I said most of the time you really only need a lawn capacity of 10,000, but I wouldn't want you to reduce the size of that area to compromise the park. So being able to go up in capacity to 15 to 18,000 is fine.
Oh, so we could. Well, see, I got hung up on that. Like we can't do 12,000 shows anymore.
I was saying from a market perspective, we think you're okay with a lawn capacity closer to 10. But if you've got that space, if it's in the park design, it's not
Well, then, to me, the only concern is getting back to the covered seating part.
Right.
I look forward to options on that. And I'm not comfortable with the 25 to 3. I'm comfortable more with the 3 to 35. Thank you. That's it.
Okay.
Thanks.
I think what we're hearing is that he needs some, are we comfortable with some flexibility? To try to figure out exactly what will work best. We will never be able to provide enough seated capacity for certain events. We will never be able to provide enough standing room or lawn seating for certain events. We can't build to the maximum, just like we can't provide enough lanes on a highway so that there will never be a traffic jam. We have to figure out what will work more frequently and be more suitable for a variety of different types of events. We have how many events at the park now, and only one or two of them get up to above 10,000. So it would be foolish to build for 15,000 when we're not even there yet with what we've got, you know? And let's keep in mind, again, we can't do anything permanent. You know, we can't have permanent seats there. So we can't look at the St. Augustine example and say, well, let's do it like St. Augustine and provide 45,000 because they have that, what do you call it, the rate?
Yes.
Okay. You know, we're not going to be able to do that. You know, our experience is going to be, what is unique about what we've got is the location. You know, and that's what we have to keep in mind, that will be as flexible as it possibly can be. Mr. Albrecht.
I really want to be flexible, but I'm wondering why you're bringing up a retractable roof when probably a fixed roof would be cheaper. And probably, since we're only talking about 2,500, 30,000 seats, why would we think we'd need a retractable roof?
I think it would be a great thing to have, because there are some events that they don't want to have any roof at all, and they don't want to have any seats at all. They want grass all the way down to the front. I also think that the technologies are advancing rapidly, such that the cost associated with some level of a retractable roof is at least worth exploring. And the third reason is not having that roof there changes the visual profile of the structure to look more like a park when it's not in use.
Okay, thank you.
Okay? Are you comfortable?
Yes, sir.
Are we comfortable? As much as we can be.
Well, he
right
just
now.
said 2,500 to 3,500, so I don't know if we've got that. There's a difference in what he was suggesting and where we all are, I think.
I'm talking about seating, the
Not the
actual
covered seating.
covered seating.
Yeah.
I realize that,
I
in
mean,
fact, I don't even know, this might be a question for Kevin. What would be the capacity of that, of the whole thing? What is the capacity with the green area and everything?
10,000 in covered seating.
no, at one point we were talking about 15, weren't we?
What is that number?
Talking about with the seated area and a lot.
Yes.
I think the suggestion is right now to go somewhere around 10.
Yeah.
But because it's a park and there are spaces outside.
You could.
You could go, yeah.
I get that. I'm good with that.
But I don't feel that in my business planning I have to limit that total capacity to 10, because the way the site is laid out now, you have more than 10.
Yes, that's what I think, because I mean,
So,
it's,
so I've said, from a market perspective, you probably don't need all of that for most events, but you've got it. It's in the site plan. You don't want to necessarily reduce the size of it, so we'll use it.
Let me ask Mr. Ham, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm a little confused.
Wait, I'm not sure he's finished.
well, I asked to have a detailed drawing, which Mr. Maxwell did give me, that's scalable, and I did scale out after the roof extension of, we were talking 3,500 seats, I think. Well, maybe it was even 4. But we had an area bigger than a football field left over in the green area, which is huge compared to what we have now at Coachman Park. So that was my question. With, if we put 18,000 people in that thing, is the fire marshal going to say no, or is he going to? Is that the capacity for that whole area? Is that going to be?
Those calculations were based on, and came out of the original master planning process, based on ratios of, I think the 18,000 was all,
Okay.
was all standing.
Yes.
And not blankets, not chairs. And then
I
were there other ratios that showed a mix of seated and standing, or a mix of seated and blanket and standing, all three of them. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, but blanket versus standing is important.
Right.
Mr. Ham,
I just, so that I understand though, let's say 3,000 covered seating, but when you say 10,000, you're not saying 3,000 covered seating and 7,000 standing. You're talking 3,000 seating, but then with the ability to have an additional 10, so we're at like 13, right?
Well, I was saying from a market perspective, a total capacity of 10 would be good, but the reality is that on that site, you can do 3 plus 12.
Depending on how
If they're all
familiar you want the
standing, or
crowd
if
to
they're
get with each other.
Blankets or, right, so you,
Okay.
Where we put the temporary fencing.
and if we get Bradley Cooper and Lady Gaga, we're probably going to need 25,000. Mr. Horn?
Well, right now, if we just look at what's on our table right now, Jazz Holiday is always going to look to put as many people in the park as they can get there. And so let's say we have 3,000 covered seating, they're going to push to get as many people to come in that grass area behind it. On the other hand, if you look at a Wild Splash event, I'm going to limit, how many people we're going to have in that type of an event, because there are other dynamics that need to be managed. And so I'm not going to be interested in having, 15,000 people in that park. When we know what our challenges are there, it's a great event, everybody loves it, but it's a different managed event compared to a Jazz Holiday. And so there will be other events where the focus won't be on the max capacity, the focus will be on the niche audience. We're at Sea Blues this weekend. And that seems to be, that will continue to grow, but it is a niche group. And they seem to be pretty comfortable with 7,000 or 8,000 people there. I see that as fitting in very nicely, over a couple of days. But there may be other groups, as well.
Mr. Maxwell?
Yes, just one last comment. On the 18,000, so you're aware, that if we went to that number, because that's basically just based on the green area, that does push out the other amenities such as the restrooms, because you need to bring in other restrooms, and the food service, all of those things out into other areas of the hardscape park. So the footprint becomes larger, and you're going to have to close down more areas of the park. That's just if you go to the high end, just so you know.
Again, that's more of a...
Right, and I would agree with you, Mike, and you, Mayor, is that if we have those one-off events, where they're like Jazz Holiday brings in Lady Gaga, whatever, to have the capacity to stand them up shoulder to shoulder, fire marshal approval, is going to be a one-off. And if we need more infrastructure, we're pretty good at renting portalets. So that can happen. I wanted to just touch one last question, because Florida Orchestras is well loved in the Tampa Bay area, and to be able to bring them for a dozen or how many ever shows they're willing to do. One of the things that several of these venues utilize is it's about the VIP area and food and beverages, but you talked about a flat surface out in front, so in the options that you come back with, that would be a very popular sale item, is VIP table potential. Front, sides, somewhere, maybe not front, sides, but something like that, especially for an audience like the Florida Orchestra.
So Chris Sprague and the design team are very worried about what that does to sightlines.
Yeah.
But I'm going to try with them to negotiate an area up front. Maybe I can get a few hundred people up front to do something without really messing with the sightlines.
Okay.
Can I ask one question back of council? Because Mr. Albritton, excuse me if I mispronounced that, you raised a good point about driving downtown spending. We really dug into the question of the profitability of these amphitheaters, because that kept coming up. And our bottom line around that is, if you really want to drive that bottom line profitability, it's really about food and beverage operations. But many of you said in the interviews, the project is more than anything else about driving downtown development and downtown revitalization. So in my business plan, can I pull back on going 100% on food and beverage in order to respond to that other goal of driving downtown revitalization?
If you can offset the revenues by the loss of that food and beverage consideration.
Right. So we will be more like, the level of food and beverage that, some of the other ones do, like Cocoa Booth and others, rather than as aggressively as they might do in St. Augustine. So it's just...
I'm saying that they probably need something down there, because if I'm in the middle of a concert, I get thirsty, I don't have to walk back up the hill to get, I'd like to get something there, but I don't want to take the opportunity for somebody to have dinner, out of a food truck, when they could be eating downtown and then going down to the event. So,
But doesn't that vary on what the event is that you're going to?
Yeah, and there's a huge revenue stream for
You
food
know.
and beverage for Jazz Holiday. They
Yeah,
make,
I mean,
they make a lot of money on
I
those
think
vendors.
that
It's
varies
huge.
on things that you know, from my perspective, it's a whole lot better to have something down there that's going to attract people, not just for the special events, but so that they come back when there's nothing going on at that park, so that they can support the downtown businesses and use the park as something extra. We're not building this park, in my, you know, I think we have to keep that in mind, is what I'm saying.
I can be flexible, but
Yeah.
that is just something that I'm passionate about because I think that this is going to be a real spark for the downtown, and I don't want to, just like when we have events downtown, I don't like to bring in a lot of food vendors and put them right in front of the restaurants.
But let me stir the pot here, okay? Because I come down to almost all of the events, and I don't come down to enjoy the music. I come down to watch people and make sure everything is working okay. We have created a culture, an entertainment culture right now, to your point, that if I come down, I will get a full meal among those vendors that we are currently using to support the events. So it is highly unlikely, Sea Blues, Jazz Holiday, some of the other concerts, Hispanic Heritage, that I will go downtown and eat a meal after I've been down here. You know, that's why what you're saying, there's some relevance to that because of how we have kind of cultivated, you know, how people meet those food and dining needs. I was sitting here thinking earlier, and I'm thinking, to accomplish Councilmember Albritton's goal, we really have to limit how much food, how many food options and drink options we have here if we want people to be encouraged to go downtown to eat. Because right now, you know, I'm sure that's not a second thought unless they like Clear Sky or they have a passion for Thai food or something like that, where a you know, what's been kind of a destination restaurant. But when you start adding food trucks and those kinds of things, the vendors, and I just watched people yesterday, you know, I mean, there's a lot of options.
But the way that it is now, you've got the Harborview Center there, and Coachman Park is separated from the downtown.
Yeah.
So you're not, I mean, you don't think about walking all the way back out of the park up the street to get something. But maybe I'm thinking of two different things. I can see big events that have 80,000, 10,000 people, like the Sea Blues and the Jazz Holiday. The bigger events having that kind of support, but I guess I was kind of thinking of the smaller ones, like the 25 to 3,000 seat events wouldn't have a barrage of food trucks. I mean, you would, you know, the older people would probably come down early, have dinner, and then go to the concert. The younger people, when they go to a concert that they like, they'd probably go down and watch the concert and then go to a bar afterwards. So, you know, there's...
That's why I said it depends on what the event is,
Yeah,
what people are going to do.
it's true. That's right. It is.
I could, just real quickly, I did pull up some of the numbers for revenues for the 2017-2018 season. Those smaller concerts, Third Eye Blind, Sammy Hagar, both at 89% of the revenue was food and beverage. If you look at something like a Sea Blues, it was closer to about 36% of the revenue. So it does vary by the different type of event. Duncan will get that information, and we'll have an opportunity to try to work through that. We will have, of course, you know, parking options upstream up on the east side of Osceola, where right now we have a lot of parking that's on the west side of Osceola. That's going to go away. So our hope is that we do pull some people through downtown.
Okay?
A few more comments on that, please. On the food thing, it's like the parking. I think it's an absolute necessary amenity. This is Imagine Clearwater that's supposed to be the stimulus for the active edge in Osceola, which will migrate to downtown. The goal of Imagine Clearwater is not to give them food options, convenience, the amenity of eating down there, and force them to either come early enough to eat downtown. It's supposed to stimulate, bring people on a regular basis. And then if they choose, the whole idea is to bring development, whether it's restaurant, retail, bar. I mean, to take away that amenity and option, it's a huge financial piece for, I can tell you for sure, Ruth Eckerd Hall, Micah just stated, 89% of food and beverage revenue.
Right.
So for some events.
Yeah, no, just to add on there, that I will say that the majority of the revenue shown in these documents is from the beverage side, not necessarily the food side. So it's people buying drinks.
Except in the case of Jazz Holiday where there's, and I don't know
Right,
what.
and I don't
the
have
other
Jazz Holiday on
Yeah,
there.
they're, I mean, those vendors pay quite a bit to be there, but we have a captured audience of, I mean, they're getting 25, 30,000 people for 4 days, for instance, on Jazz Holiday. They recover their vendor fees. And happy to do it.
So I think that, given all the other projects that we've seen, I think you have a terrific opportunity after removing Harbor View and having parking up on top of the bluff to really move people through your downtown and drive that business.
And I'm going to close by repeating my favorite theme, is that if we do a good job on all of this, people are going to come back not just for the special events.
Right.
They're going to come back to Coachman Park, to Imagine Clearwater, to the downtown, because of everything else that goes on in this special events, is that lure.
Comes back to the price tag, then you can think about shrinking that price tag versus the operating implications of doing it. I think it's easier to start the operating budget at 3,000 and potentially drop it, this seated capacity at 3,000.
Okay?
Great, thank you.
And our next meeting then, I'm not saying this to rush you, but just to give us, an approximate date as to when you think you might be finished.
About 4 weeks, that's the plan.
So yeah, we're focused on sometime early April, trying to come back to the council.
Very good. Thank you very much again from all of us.
Thank you.
And to the staff. We are adjourned.
Thanks.
You don't get too many chances to.
And we looked at restaurants along the way, too.
So are we going back to the?